If qualifying for the semi-final wasn't good enough, Australia now want to finish on top of the table at the ICC Cricket World Cup 2019. They have pulled up a gap as far as the points table is concerned, way ahead of everyone else on 14 points. That after they beat New Zealand by a huge margin of 86 runs. It was that man again, Mitchell Starr, with the ball doing the trick for Australia, picking up 5 wickets all, also getting a record there. Now he's become the first bowler to get 3 5 wickets all in World Cups. Now that happened after you had Trent Boult for New Zealand picking up that hat-trick. He himself put up a few records there, the first New Zealand bowler to get a hat-trick at World Cups. But in the end, it wasn't going to be good enough for New Zealand because Australia were too strong on the day, winning that game, as I said, by 86 runs. You're watching ESPN Cricinfo Matchday UK 2019. I'm Nikhil Naz in the company of Michael Hussey and Dan Vettori. Michael, happy to be proven wrong. You thought this was a below par total, but a great performance from the Australians.
Yeah, well, it showed it was well above par in the end. It did look tough for batting out there, but I think you've got to give a lot of credit to the Australian bowlers. I think all of the main bowlers did a fantastic job. They really built up a lot of pressure on the New Zealanders, starved them of runs. They couldn't really get going. They couldn't rotate the strike, and eventually the pressure built, and they played probably some regrettable shots. But I must admit, when I arrived about 3 weeks ago, I was really concerned about Australia's 4th and 5th bowling options, possibly their 3rd bowling option as well. Okay. But I think they've solved all those problems now. This attack looks really strong. I think Berendorf looks really good. I thought perhaps he wouldn't swing the ball as much in these conditions. Yeah. He bowled beautifully and got some late swing. And I thought Nathan Lyon was absolutely superb. And Australia, they've got to stick with him now moving forward. So I think the attack now looks really, really strong.
You were talking about, what, 2 bowling options, 3. They've used 8 bowlers, all of them doing their job versus New Zealand. We're going to get into the details a little later, but let's talk about the larger picture for New Zealand. I mean, 6 games without a loss, the only undefeated team for a long time alongside India, and then 2 losses. It's completely changed for them this World Cup now.
Yeah, things do change quickly, and I think with all the permutations available on the table, then New Zealand will start to look at what's going on in other games, particularly with the Pakistan and Bangladesh games, and see how they go. But I think overall New Zealand are still the team that will remain confident, and I know it's tough to say after a performance like this, but they'll look forward to that England game. They'll head up to Durham for that last game and have some confidence around how they're going to play. I think they made some good changes in the team selection today. I think they bowled well again. I think both bowling units did a great job today. It's just the batting partnership that New Zealand never had that Australia did in Khawaja and Carey. That was the real difference today, that 2 players who could assess conditions as well as they did, and I think that's what New Zealand need to do in the next game, is look to assess those conditions and hopefully get a lot out of their batting unit.
Right. The one problem area for New Zealand throughout this tournament has been, even though it was shadowed by, good performances by the lower order as well as, the middle order getting runs, but the top order was that area of concern, not getting runs. That hasn't been sorted either, even when you got Henry Nicholls in. I know it's just one game, but they really need to look at that, because most successful teams this World Cup have got the top 3 getting them runs.
You're right. I thought Guptill started to look good in this game. Nicholls was unlucky to get caught down the leg side. And we know how good Williamson is, and probably a slightly tired shot today, but I still believe that Guptill can play a major part in this tournament. And I know I've said that probably every game. We're still waiting for it, but he is that good a player. He is that much of a difference maker for New Zealand when he plays well. So from a New Zealand perspective, let's keep hoping that the next game's Guptill's, because I truly do believe he can make a huge difference.
And how will he be mentally? Because, if you have low score after low score, is he still a positive guy and you'd expect him to come out of that pretty quickly, or does he just keep getting deeper and deeper into the hole?
He is a positive guy, but I think the nature of tournament play means that every game is a little World Cup, and so everyone treats it that way and the media treats it that way. We talk about it. So the conversations are Martin Guptill out of form. But I think because he's played so much and because he's been so consistent for such a long period of time, he'll still believe he can come out and play. It's a tough attack to come up against today, and Berendorf and Stark, they bowled really well. They bowled fast, particularly Stark first up, and he's going to face that challenge again against England with Archer and Wood. Wokes. So it's not an easy task, but he's done it before, and he's done it a lot of times before.
Okay, now good bowling performances from both the teams, whether it is New Zealand or Australia. I'm just trying to look at the difference between the two sides. Where is it that the game was lost? Australia were in trouble at 96 for 5. New Zealand, on the other hand, 116 for 3. That's when they needed a partnership. Australia could get that, but New Zealand failed to do it.
Yeah, well, it's small margins, really. I think Kane Williamson was the one for New Zealand that looked like he was going to try and play that Khawaja innings, bat throughout the whole innings and set his stall out to be the man to score that 80 or 90 not out or 100 for New Zealand. Unfortunately for him, he just tried to run one and you just make one mistake and you're gone. Khawaja, on the other hand, he played very nicely, but he certainly had a little bit of luck along the way as well. So it's fine margins. I think probably the standout in this game was Alex Carey. When he came to the crease, he was probably the only player in the whole game that was able to come out and score freely, time the ball very, very well right from the word go, and probably played a match-winning innings there for Australia. He was the only one that pretty much went run a ball. I'd say every other batsman would have been well below a run a ball, and so it was an outstanding innings, and that might have been the difference because, I agree, 2 good bowling performances from both the sides, but that innings from Alex Carey, and well supported by Usman Khawaja, who, yes, had a bit of luck along the way, was probably the difference in the game.
But the two of them, Carey and Khawaja, were ready to dig their heels in, and that's something that was lacking with New Zealand. Like I said, they were in trouble with 3 down, 116, could have salvaged the situation from there, but then we see the 2 shots that were played from Ross Taylor as well as Colin de Granholm. That application was lacking, would you say?
Well, I think it's the desire to get that partnership. I think in these big games and the back end of the tournament, 2 good teams playing against each other, it's a couple of players in a situation, assessing conditions and understanding what's required. And I think Khawaja did that perfectly in the way that he looked at the conditions and they looked how well Carey was playing. And they tried to turn strike over, get them through, and understand what the par score was or what they thought a par score was. So the ability and the intelligence to work through that and get to the score that they did was the difference. And I think for New Zealand, they were just put under a lot of pressure. It was a really complete bowling performance by the Australian team, and we can say, well, they needed partnership, but we say they've shown more application. But I think in the end, it's how well Australia bowled at the start, through the middle with line, and then obviously start complementing that at the end again as well.
I think one thing that we've spoken about on this show a few times is that's an underrated skill, is the ability to be able to rotate the strike. You see the best players in the world, like a Williamson, a Coley, a Joe Root, they've got this great ability just to be able to work the singles, particularly when the conditions are quite tough. And I felt as though against a very good Australian bowling attack, quite a lot of the New Zealand batsmen weren't able to be able to manipulate the ball into the gaps and get off strike and keep the scoreboard ticking over in that way. And once those dot balls build up, the pressure builds up. As a batsman, you feel that pressure and you think you've got to play a big shot, and that's when you obviously can lose your wicket.
It's those conditions that are becoming more prevalent now as well. The Afghanistan-Pakistan game, 250 seems like a really good score. And in the past, it's just blast your way to a total and then see if you can hang on from a bowling attack. But now, the last, feels like 2 weeks of the tournament, they've produced amazing games, but they're 250-run games, and that needs a completely different style of batting that Huss is talking about.
Okay, when the conditions get tough, you expect the batsman then, if you're not getting boundaries, to get those singles or doubles, is something that Michael talks about. We love him as an analyst because he's talking about these things, looking at it from the naked eye, but we've got a few stats as well. 68% dot balls is what New Zealand played during their inning. Is that then something that they now go back into the dressing room and talk about?
I think that would be incredibly frustrating for coaching staff and also for the team, that they have prided themselves on being able to adapt to conditions and understand what's required. The total was in front of them. They know that Australian bowling attack really well. They got a sense of that wicket from when Australia batted. So to not be able to turn the strike over is what really kills you in these sorts of games. So they need to get that percentage down below 50%, because that means you're being efficient, that means you're being busy. You're looking to turn over the strike as much as possible. You're not being reckless or aggressive. You're just being efficient. And I think that efficiency could be the difference maker in these next 4 or 5 games that are going to be so crucial for all teams in the World Cup.
And I'm not saying it's easy. It's a very good bowling attack, and the conditions, it's not like it's a really flat pitch. So it's not easy to come in and just be busy and knock it around, but the great players, they seem to be able to do it.
To be fair, we're criticising the way that New Zealand could have rotated the strike or even get those runs. Did the pitch get tougher, according to you, in the second innings?
It's a good question. I would say no, not tougher. I think it probably played similarly throughout the whole 100 overs or 90 overs. I just think the Aussies bowled extremely well. It didn't look easy in the first innings either. Probably, as I said, Carey was the only one that was able to come out and time the ball nicely. The spinners for New Zealand certainly got plenty of perches. Even Kane Williamson, who's not a huge turner of the ball, was getting some turns. So, I'd say it wouldn't have changed too much. Perhaps it got a little bit tighter as the game wore on and maybe didn't come onto the bat quite as well as in the first innings. So maybe there was a little advantage for Australia there.
Okay, now the standout performer for Australia with the ball was Mitchell Starr. We were talking about the 5 wickets that he's picked. In fact, he's made a record, as I said, picking up 5 wickets all in a World Cup. No other bowler has done that, and this is his best bowling average in Cricket World Cup, minimum of 20 wickets that we're seeing, and this is Mitchell Stark right on top with 46 wickets that he's picked up in 16 matches. And look at that gap after that. The second is Mohammad Shami, way behind in terms of the wickets that he's picked, but he's picked 25 with an average of 14 as well. Michael, we keep talking about him picking wickets in all stages of the game. He doesn't get it with the new ball. The ball wasn't swinging much, but he has other skills that gets him wicket, as he can do it in the middle or even the death overs.
Well, and I think that's why he's top of that list, because he's a threat with the new ball. Okay, he didn't pick wickets early today, but then Aaron Finch throws the ball to him when he needs a wicket in the middle, and he just keeps delivering in the middle. He's so lethal at the death. He picks wickets in clumps as well. You know, he can pick 2 or 3 in a hurry. And I must admit, I was really concerned about Mitchell Stark coming into this World Cup because he hadn't actually played a lot of cricket. And he's the type of bowler that needs bowling under his belt to really find his rhythm. If he hasn't got his rhythm, he can really spray the ball around everywhere. So having such a long layoff leading into the World Cup, I was a little bit nervous to see how he would go. But he has been absolutely unbelievably good and a key reason why Australia's top of the table.
Maybe that's the secret of his success. You know, there's plenty of talk about Rabada playing too much cricket, getting into this World Cup and not being successful. Maybe this is the secret. Stark played not too much cricket, comes fresh into this World Cup, has picked up, we were taking a look at the numbers now for this particular World Cup. He's picked up 24. You were part of that last World Cup where he picked up 21 and you thought that, you know, he had a fantastic World Cup. This, we haven't even reached the semi-final stage and picks up 24 already.
Well, I think the thing that stands out for me is actually bowling really fast. We talked about with Ferguson how he's intimidating batsmen, but Stark's always intimidated batsmen. But his ability now, particularly with the early on and then the back end, to either swing it conventionally or reverse swing it at exceptional pace, and you can just see that how daunting that is, how tall he is, how fast he is, and how accurate he's been. So, like Huss says, he just looks fresh. He looks ready to go. He's available to bowl any stage of the game, and he comes in and bowls fast. And that's a tough proposition for a new batsman. You can say that the set batsman can get through it and they can deal with it, but as soon as you face that in your first ball, it is very hard. And it's like the old days with Malinga. It's like never let him bowl to a new batsman, otherwise he'll get you. And it feels like Stark's like that at the moment, particularly around tails as well.
Okay, now one very important wicket that Mitchell Stark picked up was that of Kane Williamson. Many would have thought that's where the game was decided. There could be one opinion that was a soft dismissal, trying to run it down to third man, probably getting caught. But do you think there was a plan in there? Did he bowl that slow ball? Did he bowl a cutter? Did he have something in mind?
Yeah, it was interesting watching the game, and the commentators certainly picked up on it, that normally he's bowling about 145, 146, 147 kilometres per hour. But that one there was between, I think it was about 135. And he may have just rolled the fingers on it a little bit to get a little bit of angle across Kane Williamson. It looked like a tired shot. I think the commentators picked up on that as well. He'd run a couple really hard between the wickets, and just before that ball, he was down on his haunches trying to catch his breath back. And as a batsman, you just have to be 1% off, especially when you're facing someone like Mitchell Stark. 1% off in your concentration, and you'll find yourself nicking one. That's a shot that Kane plays a lot. You know, and he gets so many runs from it. It was probably just the angle of the ball that it just angled a little bit more than he was expecting and caught the edge. Although there was a slip there as well, so it was probably a low percentage shot for Kane on that occasion.
Okay, he did rather well. Let's just talk about the positives for Australia. Plenty in this particular game. I stay with you on that, Michael. The middle order was the issue. I think probably the only issue that seems to have been sorted with this win now.
Yeah, I think you're right. There was always going to be a time when Warner and Finch went cheaply. And then the challenge was going to be set for that middle order. I thought they did pretty well, particularly Khawaja and Alex Carey. We'd still like more runs from Maxwell, and certainly Stoinis, he's probably the one that's really struggling the most. But, you know, we know they've got X factor, and we know at the right time They can play an innings of substance, so they won't be looking to make any changes there by any stretch of the imagination. I thought Maxwell's a little bit unlucky today, getting one right off the end of the bat that balloons back and gets him out. And probably Stoinis copped a decent delivery as well, so they won't be stressing too much about that. But yeah, the middle order was challenged. They were able to respond, and it was good to see that they could still put a winning score on the board when it wasn't the likes of Finch, Warner and Steve Smith making the bulk of the runs.
All right, it was an easy win then for Australia in the end, winning by 86 runs. Thanks so much for joining us. For those of you who are watching us on our digital platform, ESPN Cricinfo, but if you're watching us on Caribbean TV, we'll take a short little break right now. We'll have the presentation on the other side. We'll see you then.